Good evening, my name is Nathan Watson, and tonight I'm going to present to you on the topic of organizational control. And organizational control affects everybody, whether we realize it or not. It affects us as employees, as employers, and even as consumers. We're affected by the control mechanisms put in place by the organization that produces the goods that we purchase from. So the objectives of this presentation are pretty simple. We're going to talk about first the function of organizational control. We're going to look at some reasons, though not comprehensive, as to why it is needed. We'll look at some case studies to see some examples, some current relevant examples of how organizational control could have been utilized better. And we'll answer the question, what does it seek to accomplish? Then, though there are many methods for achieving organizational control, we're going to look at the total quality management method. And we'll answer the following questions. We'll answer, what is it? What are its objectives? We'll look at how it works. And then, particularly with this one, it's interesting to see how financial management fits in to this control mechanism. So what is control? I think before you can really dissect something, you got to know the basis of what it is. And Costa, Duarte, and Palermo state that control is any process in which a person or group of persons or organization of persons determines, that is, institutionally affects the behavior of another person, group, or organization. Now, essentially, that's just saying it's one entity trying to affect another entity for a particular outcome. And outcomes, in performance, they tend to be the primary concern of organizations. But I like how Costa, Duarte, and Palermo used the term behavior as what is trying to be influenced within the context of organizational control. Because behavior dictates outcomes. What one person, group, what an entity, what they do, the things, the actions that they put into play, those affect the outcomes, being the primary concern of an organization. And control applies to all organizational types. I think frequently we consider mostly for-profit as in the organizations that need to implement control measures, but it goes beyond that. 501c3 nonprofits need control measures, government agencies, so it goes beyond just making a profit. And to illustrate that, consider a scene from a movie you may or may not have seen called Schindler's List. Now, in essence, the background of the movie is about a wealthy businessman during World War II who takes it upon himself to do as much as he thinks he can at the time to save as many Jews as he can from going to concentration camps where most likely they'll eventually die. And he leverages his personal income and his resources over a series of years to smuggle out Jews who were listed to be deported out of cities, get them out of concentration camps. At the end of the movie, Schindler is confronted with a group of Jewish individuals who were directly impacted by his altruistic actions and were actually saved from concentration camps. And they present him with a token of their appreciation. And as Schindler is standing there, he becomes overwhelmed with emotion, and he starts to think of all that he could have done more. And in one of the most grabbing scenes, he actually pulls an expensive ring off his finger, and he says, this could have been one or two, this could have been more. The point being, Schindler was exemplifying a control. He was looking back at his resources and saying, what could I have done more? how could my fiscal management actually impacted a greater outcome? And it also illustrates the point again that control measures aren't always about personal interest. So let's look at the function of organizational control. Um, what is at stake that needs to be controlled by organizations? Now, this is not a comprehensive list, but just a few. Of course, we mentioned overall outcomes, and as Schindler demonstrated, fiscal and budgetary method control measures need to be put into place. Debt is an issue within many organizations. In fact, at our most recent presidential election, much of the debate centered around the federal deficit and how that was going to be controlled by the next president. Environmental liabilities, lawsuits, employee conduct, and organizational ethics. Those are frequently centers of liability in which a lawsuit could actually impact financial and budgetary controls. Standards of operation. We're talking about processes, procedures, and then also organizational control. What the organization believes and thinks impacts many of these other issues. So I'm going to look at the Volkswagen case, kind of like a case study. Recently, Volkswagen got caught in a scandal in which they bypassed an emissions control mechanism that was built into their engines. They intentionally bypassed it so that it would skew emissions results. The EPA had set forth some standards to reduce emissions and also increase gas mileage, and Volkswagen, unable to attain that standard, skewed the numbers, so to speak. As a result, the company recalled 500 vehicles. The fallout of these actions resulted in $18 billion in fines. Volkswagen's shares plummeted by more than 20%, which resulted in a $16.9 billion loss in market value. And ultimately, just a lack of customer trust ensued, which is going to result in future loss of income. So looking at this situation, some control measures that could have been in place that would have avoided this were definitely organizational ethics. The company could have put control measures to ensure that they were operating at ethical standards and environmental liabilities. Interestingly, shortly after the scandal broke, the Volkswagen board met to discuss new management and to revise the company's structure. So you can see at this point they did implement some control measures. ITT Tech is a for-profit school that recently closed its doors. They left 40,000 students stranded without a school and 8,000 employees unemployed. The reason this happened is the Department of Education restricted the school's access to federal funding based off the school's inability, one, to increase its cash revenues and provide a letter of credit, and also because ITT had failed to address a creditor's concerns. Essentially, those concerns were academic concerns. So in this case, ITT could have prevented that closure by implementing financial and budgetary control measures, and also measures that would have controlled their standards of operation. So what are the functions of organizational control? Organizational control seeks to promote coordination across departments and also coordination between those departments and the organization's hierarchy. It seeks to ensure that individual incentives match the organization's, and it reduces risk by it anticipates problems and offers solutions. So in those cases of ITT and Volkswagen, if they had had more effective control measure in place, they could have perceived that this future emission scandal and closure would be taking place. Now, traditionally, the control process consists of establishing objectives, implementing policies and procedures. It compares performance against those objectives, and then takes corrective action. As I said before, there are many different structures which organizations can use to control their internal workings. We're going to look at total quality management. This is an interesting control method that began in the 1950s, primarily in the Japanese automotive industry. And really, this is it's a disciplined control process that, instead of looking solely at the bottom line, it really seeks to meet and exceed the customer needs. And it asks the question, what do customers desire? And total quality management says, well, they desire higher quality at lower costs. The rationale behind total quality management is, if an organization can meet these customer desires, then they will obtain market share because more customers will be buying their product as opposed to other competitors, and that will achieve for the organization financial success. So by putting the company first, the bottom line is met. Total quality management seeks to obtain this objective by a thorough quality control of every aspect of the organization. It looks at everything the organization does and seeks to be excellent in those areas. TQM, some of the objectives, it is intentionally a decentralized approach. And in order for this to take place, the organization really has to make this a part of their culture. And they do this by really involving not just the top thinkers in the company, but everyone at every level in the decision-making process. So leadership and personnel, they're involved in what's called the continual improvement process. Some of the areas of focus for total quality management, they like to focus on management commitment, quality training for all personnel, process management. Processes, in order to deliver a product at lower cost, the processes have to be smooth moving. Quality tools, this involves training tools and also the actual equipment and mechanisms used to produce the product. And as mentioned before, total quality management really seeks continual improvement. The organization is always trying to get better. How does it work? Total quality management seeks quality in all aspects. It seeks continuous improvement by utilizing soft and hard quality management. So this is where it may differ from some more traditional quality control methods. Soft quality management is people focused, and hard quality management focuses more on the things like processes, budgets, tools, on the product itself. Some soft qualities utilized by total quality management: customer focus. It focuses on the person buying the product and what they want. Quality planning. Now, the reason this is a soft quality is because, unlike a lot of organizations, it really requires leadership to be engaged, and also for leadership to engage their employees in something that is called quality groups, also referred to as quality circles, in which employees of different areas of the company problem solve for the company itself. TQM seeks exemplary supplier relations. It seeks customer involvement in that decision-making process, and it seeks that the vision of the organization is shared with every employee, regardless of status within the organization. Total quality management, hard quality attributes. There's a heavy focus on advanced manufacturing systems. That way it can deliver the product at a lower cost. Benchmarking is something that is continually done, and that is a process in which the organization is continually setting goals that they seek to meet, and the goals continue to get more and more aggressive. Upon setting them, there has to be a commitment to the benchmarks. The organization seeks continual improvement. One of the ways that they do this is they diagram just about everything. They have cause and effects diagrams so that they can foresee if something happens within the organization, it will cause this to happen. And then they also place a high emphasis on the relationship diagrams. That way there's thorough communication throughout departments. Process management have to be smooth. It seeks fiscal efficiency and continually seeking the most relevant tools for both its employees and product development. Total quality management has a different approach to finance, financial management, and budgetary issues. It's kind of an ambiguous control method, but the reason it's harder to find is because with customer satisfaction being the key in regard to quality and cost, budgetary issues can flux. Total quality management financial success, remember, depends heavily on market share. So it's those hard and soft things that they do, having the most relevant equipment to produce the product at lower costs that actually impacts the budget. That being said, there's tight fiscal monitoring between suppliers and their manufacturing systems. Now, when evaluating a product, total quality management considers a few things. It considers technical specifications, schedule, and cost. Now, when confronted with a budgetary consideration, total quality management typically avoids trying to sacrifice one of those for another. It asks, is it conceivable that a project could meet the specifications, schedule, and budget, yet still have an unhappy customer? It also asks, could a project go over schedule or budget and still have a satisfied or even a delighted customer? And this comes from McConaughey's research. Now, if the answer is no to the latter of those two questions, TQM will seek efficiencies in order to still deliver the product to the customer at the cost in which they desire. And it goes back to the overall culture. They'll go back to those quality circles, getting the customer and actual employees involved in the continual improvement process to try and find solutions to the dilemma. So in conclusion, organizational control, it's essentially just a protection mechanism. It's meant to protect the organization, it's meant to protect the employee, and ultimately you and I, the consumer or client of these organizations. In total quality management, in essence, it seeks to provide excellence in all things. And the interesting thing about it is it isn't just a control system, as you can see, it's really a philosophy. And that may be one of the reasons in which it's considered successfully, because people buy in to something that they can believe in. Well, thanks for your time, and this concludes our presentation.